Summer is supposed to be a time of fun and relaxation and enjoying all sorts of events like going to the beach or going to parades and carnivals and going on vacation with family. But for kids with sensory processing disorder, it can be a season full of stress and difficulty. In fact, for many families, this is when they first recognize the signs of sensory issues in their children. Noticing they're easily overwhelmed in big crowds and with loud noises, they can't handle transitions well, or they struggle to stay calm and regulated in the heat. Sadly, these sensory struggles aren't just for a few families, as now today 1 in 6 kids with sensory processing disorder have various challenges each and every single day. Their nervous system struggles to filter and regulate normal input, leaving them in a constant state of sensory overload. And sadly, pediatricians often dismiss parents' concerns, saying that it's just a phase or that they'll grow out of it. But the truth is, early intervention is crucial for children with sensory processing disorder to thrive. And even more importantly, those interventions must address the root cause of sensory processing disorder and not just recommend workarounds that may be helpful but not sustainable. This video is for parents who suspect that their child may have sensory processing disorder and want to understand the signs, the causes, and available care options for their child. We'll dive deep into all things sensory processing disorder and explore how the perfect storm of factors contribute to its development, and then how neurologically focused chiropractic care can help restore the balance to your child's nervous system. Just like I mentioned before, sensory processing disorder affects a staggering 1 in 6 children, with numbers continually rising. So despite this prevalence, sensory processing disorder is frequently overlooked or misunderstood by healthcare providers. And while sensory processing disorder often co-occurs with things like autism, they are distinct conditions. And so children with sensory challenges may exhibit age-appropriate skills in some areas while struggling with pronounced sensory-based difficulties in others. Moms and dads, let's hit the most common signs of sensory processing within our kids. Things like oversensitivity to touch, types of clothing, the sounds, smells, lights, and trying new foods, which all of these lead to discomfort with certain textures or avoidance of being touched or distress when clothing feels too tight or itchy, as well as covering their ears in response to normal sounds. Fear of loud noises like vacuum cleaners, toilets, sirens, or alarms. Sensory processing disorder can also look like seeking sensory input. So constantly touching objects, seeking strong tactile sensations, or engaging in rough play. Sometimes it can look like avoiding sensory input. So avoiding those activities or those stimulus that involve physical contact, like hugging, or being distressed by activities like haircuts and teeth brushing. Sensory processing disorder also can show up in difficulties with fine motor skills. So challenges with tasks like buttoning clothes or using utensils and writing. There's common difficulties within gross motor skills as well. So problems with activities like running or jumping or riding a bike. These feed into balance and coordination issues like frequent tripping, falling, or appearing clumsy, which also shows up as poor body and spatial awareness, or the inability or the difficulty of knowing where your body is in space, leading to bumping into objects or people. One of the large ones that I'll see with kiddos is being overwhelmed in crowded places. That creates distress or anxiety within that crowded environment, like malls or parks or parties or concerts or airports for that matter. A lot of times what you'll see with this anxiety and difficulty is the struggles with transitioning between activities. So it's the meltdowns and the behaviors and the tantrums when changing from one activity to another or moving between different environments. Many kiddos struggle with emotional outbursts with sensory processing disorder. So frequent tantrums and meltdowns in response to that sensory overload and the frustration. And what you'll find with these kiddos is that there's a lot of times a difficulty with self-calming. So it's that struggle to soothe themselves when they're upset, and they often need external help to calm them down. In most cases, you'll see it go one of two ways, where there's hyperactivity or there's inactivity with sensory processing disorder. So being excessively active or lethargic, depending on the sensory input that they're seeking or avoiding. Another one of the really big things that I've seen with kiddos with sensory processing disorder is difficulty with sleeping. So it's the trouble with falling asleep or staying asleep due to those sensory sensitivities, like hearing every little noise or every little creak within the house, or things are too hot, things are too cold, the blanket doesn't weigh enough, the blanket is too much, it's too tight, it's too restrictive, the clothes, the nubbies on my socks, the little tags on my shirt, the list goes on and on. With sensory processing disorder, you'll likely see things like having a poor attention span or even impulse control. So difficulty focusing on tasks easily or getting easily distracted by sensory stimulus, like the squirrel that just ran across my window. A lot of times you'll see some of these kiddos engaging in like repetitive behaviors. And so you'll see it in a way as a method for them to self-soothe. So sometimes that can look like stimming or fidgeting or rocking, or one of the things that I've noticed in myself that I do during sensory issues is if I'm wearing jeans, it doesn't happen with any other clothes, but if I'm wearing jeans, I'll start rubbing on the jeans because of the activity that or the sensory tactile input that I'm getting from that to calm down my nervous system as well. So what's really going on within the nervous system and sensory processing disorder? So for SPD, it's a 3-part process. First, the sensory input comes in through the sensory nerves and the sensory aspect of our spinal cord. So it's reading the information from both our internal environment or our body and our external environment. So our sight, our smell, our taste, our hearing, that external information. And so second, what ends up happening is that our brain and the nervous system must process or interpret the sensory information and determine what is important to pay attention to and react to, and what's not important, and what should be filtered or essentially ignored. There's a really big part with the filter process for these kiddos. Next, the brain and our nervous system then sends the information and what are called actions or impulses out to the various parts of the brain and the body to be able to like react and respond to that incoming sensory input. So when our sensory nerve pathways into the brain and the nervous system are altered and interfered with, the brain and the nervous system then receive bad information. And in turn, that leads to poor decision making or interpretation. And finally, bad or inappropriate actions or outputs as a result of this bad information and improper processing or the interpretation of sensory information. So my mom always said, garbage in, garbage out. And that's exactly what this is. We'll just add a couple pieces to it. It's the garbage in and our brain not being able to filter it, which then creates the garbage out. Parents, the big thing here to take home about is that it's a neurosensory communication and connection problem. This is what we call subluxation or nervous system dysregulation. So parents, once you understand what stress stuck onto our nervous system is, or what we call subluxation and the nervous system dysregulation that comes with it, then moms and dads and parents and providers, OTs, PTs can truly understand what the root cause of SPD is. So the question is like, why is this stuff so hard to find? And why is it so difficult to make sense of? Well, first off, traditional pediatricians and medical doctors do not have a good understanding of SPD and neurosensory function as a whole. Secondly, no traditional medical testing or even movement-based therapies like PT or OT know how to find or detect subluxation and nervous system dysregulation in this way or any way. While the root cause of sensory processing disorder may escape most common medical diagnostic testings, our neurological insight scanning technology is literally designed to find subluxation, find and measure nervous system dysregulation and the dysfunction that comes with it, and then help parents see with their own eyes exactly what's causing their child's frequent tantrums, the meltdowns, and sensory difficulties and sensitivities. If you feel like you've already done months or even years of OT and made all sorts of sensory workarounds part of your normal everyday life, and you just want things to be easier and less modified for your child and your family, you need to learn more about exactly how neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic care works. This specialized form of chiropractic care, like we provide at our office here at Haven Family Chiropractic, can do so much for kids struggling with sensory issues. And they help your child and your whole family get back to an easier, calmer, and more consistent quality of life with chiropractic care. So to be able to learn more or schedule an appointment, simply check the link below or within our bio. Leave us a comment or even send us a DM to get connected to one of our care advocates right away. We are always willing and able to help you along this journey.